What's up, everybody? It's Tim Bryant from Shut Up and Dad, along with my co-host and my brother, Chris.
Hey, everybody.
Last week was our first episode, and we got much better reception than I think either one of us expected. We had, as of the time of recording, and we're only 4 days in since it was posted, and we already had 114 listens, which I think we're both so thankful for, because that kind of gave us the reassurance that maybe this is something that we can continue to do and people will want to listen to. So thank you to everybody that listened. Today, we are joined by one of the most influential men in my life, I would imagine probably in both of our lives, and the man who, for some reason, for 15 some odd years, I've affectionately greeted by the name Turtle Dick. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
Good. So I figured this episode we're titling Follow the Leader. And basically what we want to talk about is what we learned from our parents and how that applies to our own parenting style. And we can cover a couple generations here. So I figured we could start and just jump right into, maybe you could give us a little backstory with your father. What memories do you have, good or bad, from him, and go from there?
Well, I think I don't really have a whole lot of memories about my dad because he stepped out of my life at a pretty young age. And even before he stepped out of my life, he wasn't around that much. He was a wannabe policeman, and unfortunately, when that's the case, you're exposed to a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. I think he couldn't handle all the good things, so like me, my sister, my mother, he elected to go after the bad things, which were the wild women. So unfortunately, he never was around very much for me, and I really don't have a whole lot of memories of him.
Right, and that's something that, you know,
no good ones. None.
Not a you don't have a single good memory.
Not a
with him?
single one. Not a single one.
What about later in life? I know that the two of you talked at certain points later in life. I mean, was there any kind of reconciliation or any good memories even later in life?
There was a couple of times when I was able to talk with him, and I deep down inside really wanted him to be my father, and I gave him every opportunity to come back into my life, and he elected not to. Later on in my life, I met a brother that I did not know I had.
I was going to bring that up. I was going to say that could be one good memory, right? Even though it's an after-the-fact memory.
But it's not a memory of him.
True.
Because I was in my mid-60s, and Doug was in his middle 50s when we first met. And I really didn't know if I wanted to meet him or not. But after mulling it over for a month or so, I finally figured it out that it's not his fault. You know, he could be the nicest guy in the world, or he could be a mass murderer. But I had to find that out. So I decided, Doug and I decided that we really wanted to meet each other. I met him. It was love at first sight. We're totally different people, but I know he's my brother.
So you didn't know that he even existed until when?
Probably I kind of thought maybe there was others. I knew there was a girl, but I really didn't know there was a boy. Really, the first time I met him on Facebook was the first time I knew that he even existed.
And who found who? Did you find him or did he find you?
Well, probably for a year or so, I had there was a Facebook page called "You Know You're from Breathitt County If." It's a Jeff Foxworthy thing. I kept going on there and seeing all these people that I remembered from my childhood. So I had typed up a little paragraph telling, my name and where I was at and who my father was, and ask if there was anyone who could help me find him. It wasn't maybe 5 minutes, and I get a message from my dad's new wife, I guess, her brother, saying that he knew my dad, and my dad was married to his sister. And I said, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. This didn't take very long. Do you know where he's at? And he said, Marv, I'm sorry to say this, but he passed away. Why? I kind of knew that he had passed away, but I was just trying to find out, excuse me, if there was anybody else. And he says, you have a brother and a sister. I still kind of had an attitude about it.
Right.
I said, I don't have a brother and a sister. I said, I've got one sister. Her name is Patricia, and she's in Michigan. And he says, can I have your brother, which is Doug, send you a friend request? And I said, yeah. So that's how I met Doug, and I'm so glad I did. I later on met the sister, which I didn't like that much. She unfortunately passed away a year or so ago.
Okay. And going back to your dad and the time that you spent with him, do you think, for good or for bad, that he influenced how you parented in any way?
I think the only thing my dad taught me, and I never really knew this, and Doug and I talked about this. The first time I met Doug, we talked all night long. We laughed, we cried, we did a little bit of everything. At the end of the night, I had to go to bed because I had to go to work the next day. He says, Marv, I just wanted to tell you one thing that I think, and I believe this too. He says, Daddy taught us both one thing. And I said, I don't think he taught me much because I really didn't know him. He said he taught us how not to be like him. And I tried my whole life not to be like him.
So you said he walked out at a young age, but I'm sure you had a father figure in your life. You want to talk a bit about that?
I had a grandpa that I loved more than life itself. I had uncles on my mother's side. So when my dad walked out of my life, I walked out of his family's life. I never saw any of them ever again. But my grandfather, he stepped into the picture. My uncle more than one uncle stepped into the picture. And I would like to thank each and every one of them. My Uncle Carl, who unfortunately lost to pancreatic cancer about 2 months ago. My Uncle Merle, who taught me, I think he's the one who influenced me to do what I did to make a living, to raise you two. he taught me how to fix cars with my hands. And just a bunch of very loving family. And I thank God for every one of them. Because if it hadn't been for them, I would have been in jail, I'm sure.
So what did your grandpa teach you? Was he probably the biggest of them in terms of influence, or did it really just kind of spread out between all of them?
I think it kind of spread out between all of them, but my grandpa taught me one thing: to respect the people around you, to respect them and to listen to them and to do your best to be the best person you can be. I can remember him telling me as probably, I don't know, 10 or 11, that you can do anything you want to do as long as you want to do it. But you have to want that.
There's something else that I know he taught you because I've heard you tell the story before. Maybe you can tell that story now about he taught you a specific way to walk around a tobacco field, I believe would be the way to jar this memory.
To walk around a tobacco field?
Yeah, because he was a tobacco farmer, right?
Well, he was a farmer. He had tobacco. He had corn. We had cows. We had pigs. We had all that.
Okay, so when he was walking around the crops, was there something specific he did with a gun, maybe?
Oh, okay. I was really young. Yeah, I don't know. 5, 6, 7. I don't really remember. I think this was even before my dad stepped out of my life. My grandpa, he had pigs, and they ran loose in the woods, in the hills of Kentucky, southeastern Kentucky. And there was fencing there, and he would always have to walk this fence line once a week to make sure the pigs hadn't rooted out underneath the fence and got out and went to the neighbor's farm. And then they would, hillbillies can get kind of weird. They say, that's my pig. So anyway, but my grandpa would never let me walk in front of him. He would always walk in front of me, and he always carried a shotgun. And I never really knew why he did that until one day we were walking along, and I'm the typical 7, 8-year-old who sees everything, every bug, everything there is, and then all of a sudden, kaboom, the shotgun went off. And it kind of startled me. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know why he was shooting that gun. And he got me, and he said, now there is why I did not want you walking in front of me. And it was a big rattlesnake laying there coiled up, ready to strike the first unsuspecting person who walked by, which would have been me. So, he taught me something.
Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to meet him. I think, wasn't he 99 years old when we went down to Kentucky?
When you met him in the hospital?
Yeah.
I think he was probably, oh gosh, I think he was in his early 90s then, because he didn't pass away right away.
Okay. So.
But I remember it was very emotional for me, because when we walked into the room, it wasn't the grandpa that I had left years before. It was the shell of him, because he was very sick and he was real skinny. I don't know if you remember or not.
I remember shaking his hand.
Yeah.
And I remember him having very big fingers. That was my memory with you.
Yeah.
Big fingers.
Yeah. I had to go out in the hallway because I didn't want you to see me cry, because I'm this big tough guy. you know?
I saw you cry plenty of times in my life, and I would think that's one of the traits I probably got from you, and my wife says thank you.
I think it takes a bigger man to cry than it takes not to cry.
I mean, I remember, I do remember, so you mentioned earlier you knew that your father had passed away, and I do vividly remember that because I remember you sitting out on the front porch crying.
Yeah. Yeah. I had met a guy at the University of Michigan where I worked at, who years before, he was from southeastern Kentucky. He was from Jackson, Kentucky. That's where I was from. And we talked, and he asked me, he says, what did your dad do? I said, he was a wannabe policeman. And the more we talked, the more I realized this guy knows who my dad is. And it ended up that my dad had arrested him for drunk and disorderly when he was a young, crazy person.
Nice.
And like he said to me, he says, Marv, he says, give your dad a chance. He's your father. I said, no, he's not. Yeah, I'm in my mid-30s at this point. Right. I said, I really don't want to give him a chance, but I kind of wish I had, but I can't now. I did what I did.
Right. Well, we can't really.
We can't change it.
Yeah. So fast forward through the unlikely event that you actually survived long enough to have kids of your own, because I've heard plenty of those stories as well. But that's for another time and another place. But let's talk about once you had children of your own. Let's start right at the beginning. Let's start kind of prior to the beginning, which is really the beginning. When you found out you were having a child, what did you think at that point?
I was in sheer shock.
Was it an accident?
It's never an accident. It was the real thing. I mean, we did whatever we did, and you and Chris are proof of that. And I've never been sorry. I never was. I wasn't ready for a child. I don't think we ever
are. Are we ever when we have the first one?
I don't think we ever are when we have the second one or the third one or the fourth one. But once they're here, they're yours.
Right.
And the only thing you can do is to try to guide them the best you know how and to love them. And I did the best with you two.
So day one, I'm here. I'm in this world, and you've just brought me home.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind?
I'm sitting out on the front porch, and I'm thinking about this little guy in there crying, and I'm thinking about, you can't take that back.
You lost your receipt.
I lost my receipt. This is a no return because he was clearanced. No.
Jeez. A whole new perspective on myself being.
I loved you from the first time I saw you. I'll never forget when they brought you in and let me hold you. You were a pretty big boy, and you had a pretty big head, and I didn't realize that.
That's why I was a clearance man.
Yeah, that's why you were in clearance, because you weren't like everyone else. No, I'm kidding. No, the nurse brought you in and let me hold you, and I looked at your head, and it was like a football. And I says, my God. I said, I looked at the nurse, and I said, is he always going to look like that? And she said, no. She said, we have to shape his head. I mean, this was like you hadn't probably taken 30 breaths. I got you. But it was pretty cool. I mean, it was real cool. I wish I could go back to that day, but I can't.
That's why I'm trying my best to. I have so many ambitions and so many things I want to try, and this is one of them. This podcast, and all of it just takes up time, but I'm doing my best to, from the time I walk in the door every night until the time they go to bed, to dedicate every minute to them, because I've seen how fast Tenley has already grown up, 6 years old.
Oh yeah.
And then Annalisa still being 1. I don't want to miss a single day of that. So yeah,
no.
I know how you feel. I want to go back to that day already.
Well,
so.
I think you just take every day and you keep them as a treasure. And right. There's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days. And there will always be those days. There will be days, I'm sure both you and Chris have already experienced this, where you just want to give them back. I don't want this no more. But you can't, you just, those feelings just come and go real fast.
I mean, you guys both talk about wanting to go back to those first days. I wish I had those first days.
Yeah.
So, I mean, treasure what you have, because some people never got them. Yeah. I hear stories. That's almost like living it. But, I mean, I still remember my first days with Aiden too, and it's not the same, but I'd love to go back to those as well.
Yeah, it is different, like in you experience what you experience, but I will say I wish that you had those days too, because there is nothing quite like having this new existence show up outside of your wife's belly, and then they hand it to you and you're like, oh.
See, that sounds terrifying, so maybe I don't want to experience that.
What is that, and what is that smell?
Yeah, I'll pass.
The baby smell doesn't bother me.
No, it wasn't baby smell.
Yeah, I pooped on you.
Well, many times there were little geysers.
I never
Both of you.
I have a son. The middle one's a son. Obviously, you know that, but he has never peed on me.
Oh God!
The girls had better aim than him, but I was never peed on, and I was never pooped on for 5.5 years. And about 2 months ago, I got poop on me for the first time.
I'm still waiting to be puked on. I've been peed on, bled on, pooped on. I have not been puked on yet. It's coming, I'm sure.
Oh, you'll say that.
Alicia got puked on this weekend. I'm sure she would have traded you.
Yeah. It's good. It's all good.
So, what I was curious, I think that it's probably pretty accurate to say that you don't really know how you are doing or how you did as a parent until you get to see your own kids parent their children. Would you say that's accurate?
I would say that's very accurate.
So knowing that, how judge yourself? Judge might not be the right word, but
rate myself.
Tell me how you.
Yeah, right.
In what you see in us.
I think
what do you think you did right? What do you think you did wrong?
I don't know. That's really a hard question. There is no book. There's no book. There's no one to tell you how to do whatever you do. You just try to. For me, you try to reach back and remember what you saw growing up and how you were treated growing up. And I did my best to give you and Chris a better life than I had. And I hope I did, because I tried.
I mean, based on what we've heard of your story being young, I would say that you did.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Tim and I are like, I don't know if it's a 50-50 split, but Tim and I are very different parts of your personality.
Oh, I know.
I mean, you put the two of us together and we clearly are your child.
Oh, I know.
But yeah, it's funny to look at the two of us coming from who we know brought us into this world and taught us what to do, and to see the different aspects, for better or for worse, that each of us have. Because I think that we did both get positives from you and we both got negatives. I don't know. I'm curious to hear what your thought is on the positives you bestowed on each of us, and maybe a negative that you bestowed. I mean, I'm well aware of the negatives you bestowed on me, and I don't blame you for it. But I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
I think I taught you both how to love your children. I think it's obvious to me that you, Chris, love Aiden with your life, and I do too. And Tim, I can see it in you and those three little ones, that you just worshiped him. And I hope that some of that came from me, I hope. The bad things, I think I gave you my temper, Chris.
Yeah, I think you did.
And Tim, I think I gave you my want to be a photographer. I wanted to be a photographer. And it's so funny. I think, I don't know if you remember this, but I asked you one time how you learned all that. He said, I used to watch you, Dad. Do you remember that?
No.
You don't remember telling me that?
I mean, I remember watching. I don't remember this conversation, but no, I do remember watching you. And this is going to get into something we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But under the age of 7, because I know we moved from Ann Arbor to Pinckney when I was 7. I think it was on my 7th birthday or something. But because I remember the realtor giving me some money for my birthday.
Because you didn't want to move.
I know. I didn't want to move. I had friends, damn it. But I do remember before moving, watching you in your makeshift dark room.
Oh, yeah.
/ laundry room, probably.
Yeah, / carpenter shop. Yeah.
So I think we could probably each tell you what we think we got from you, and you can tell us how accurate that is. So
okay.
I'll go first really quick. Number 1, I think I got your ability to yell loud when I'm upset.
Yeah.
Because I can get really loud, and luckily, I think my kids think that's funny.
I think my
which
kids thought it was
makes me try to yell even louder.
I think my kids thought it was funny too.
And one of the things that I think this is a positive to a degree. Some people might argue that it's not, but I just think it shows that you love your children. Your ability to never stick to discipline. Like every time you grounded us, you would wake us up in the morning and be like, "You're not grounded anymore."
I felt bad.
We could have crashed your car, and you would have had to walk to work, and you had grounded us for 2 years the night before, and then you'd wake us up in the morning and tell us we weren't grounded. And I'm basically the same way.
Well, I just and I think you can both truthfully say that I never really gave you a spanking. I may have swatted you with a newspaper a couple of times.
Or a belt.
I don't remember that. I don't remember hitting you with a belt, but I never really gave you the kind of whippings that I got.
Oh,
I remember threats of a belt, but I don't think I ever got hit with one.
I think I got hit once because I didn't believe you and I kept egging you on, and you finally did it and you put me in my place.
Oh yeah.
As far as not sticking to discipline, though, I had one of those moments about 10 o'clock, so a couple of hours ago. Aiden wouldn't eat his dinner, so I said, "You don't eat it in 10 minutes. You're going to bed an hour early." So I put him in bed. And then I went down on my computer and started texting my wife. I'm like, should I let him get back up? I stuck to it. Still feel bad about it, but I stuck to it. It's the first time in a long time I've stuck to a punishment. So,
what you want to talk about tonight, I let my kids play Mario because last week we talked about that being my child control device. And we're trying to break them of getting a snack every night in bed. So I had just finished working out and I came upstairs and they were still playing. And I said, if you guys want a snack, you need to stop playing the game now while I take a shower. Or if you really want to keep playing, you can keep playing, but you're not going to get a snack. And they were like, we want to keep playing. And me and Alicia both said, okay, if that's the case, we do not want to hear you whine about not getting a snack. We won't. Man, the minute we turn that game off. And it actually made me say a couple things to them that I remember hearing quite often as a child. One of them, something about talking to a wall. But then
I do that.
Then the one that I remember you saying all the time, and I'm curious now that it's actually come to fruition, what your thoughts are. But every time that we pissed you off, I seem to remember you saying something to the feel of you couldn't wait until we had kids of our own so that you could see it.
Oh yeah. I tell people about that one all the time. I said, God, they don't realize, and not just you guys, but every other kid. I see it, and you guys are experiencing it now. That you can really stress a parent out. A little one can, to the point where you just want to run away. but you can't.
Yeah.
I gotta say, 8 years in, I have not said I can't wait till you have children of your own yet. Now that I've said that, I'll probably say it tomorrow.
I've said it
but
like
I
5
haven't
times.
said it yet.
Well, I wanted some little grandkids. That's why I would say that. And now I got some, and I'm a happy camper.
So is it
Sorry,
my
I
turn
just,
to say what I?
You can, but hold on just a second,
All
because
right.
I said something and Alexa is now giving me all of the multiples of 5. Alexa, stop. Thank you, dear. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
This is why I don't have a robot in my home. But so like Tim said, yeah, I definitely got the ability to yell, but I think that I got Dad's ability to yell, which is you can raise your voice super loud, but the louder you get, the more you sound like a prepubescent little boy because your voice starts to crack.
Yep.
Dad's did that a lot.
Yep.
Made me laugh every time. Luckily for me, it still scares Aiden. One day he'll laugh at me, but it hasn't happened yet. The biggest positive, though, that I get from you, and I see it every day, is wanting to be able to do everything myself. And if I can't do it myself, wanting to learn how to do it myself. I remember all the woodworking books you had back in the day. I can actually still picture those hardcover. Most of them I think were like maroon or green. I honestly don't remember exactly what they looked like.
Those.
But I remember that's how you did everything. You had these books. I have the internet. I mean, things have changed. But, I mean, I go straight to YouTube. If I can't get a hold of you, I mean, honestly, I call you first. Hey, Dad, how do I change my battery? Hey, how do I do this?
I know.
But, I mean, I am so stubborn. I think it's my thirst for knowledge and my stubbornness that I got from you, because I want to learn how to do everything, and I refuse to admit that I can't do things. And it gets me in trouble sometimes, but for the most part, I think I've been able to do a lot of things that most people don't think they could do, simply because I refused to admit that I couldn't do it. And I got that from you 100%.
And
I think I did too.
And I got it from my grandpa. My grandpa, like I said before, you can do anything you want to do, but you got to want to do it. And I've always had this thirst to learn different things. And I know that both of you can relate to that because you've seen it.
It's like a competition between the two of us who's able to learn things more effectively. But Chris, you brought up the stubbornness of, it's the stubbornness that makes you want to do it yourself. And I think I definitely got that too. And that can really bite you sometimes, quite literally, because we don't always listen to our parents either, right?
Oh, for sure.
We never do.
And so that whole, wanting to do everything yourself and being stubborn about doing it even if you're not doing it the right way. And I'm remodeling a house, and somebody gave me a table saw and told me like all these rules to follow. And let's see, which ones did I not follow? Number 1, put this guard over the blade. That's on the floor.
Look at my
Number
table
2,
saw.
Number 2, use the right saw for the job. Yeah, didn't do that. Number 3, make sure the blade is only coming up just above the wood. It was like an inch above. Number 4, and here's the important one: don't put your hand behind the blade. Broke all 4 of them, and then ran my finger through a table saw. And I'm gonna tell you, for a while I felt like a clown for doing that. I was like, wow, well, I didn't really learn anything from Dad there, but tell us what happened to you.
I did the same thing, and I did it.
How many times?
Well, in reality, twice, but for Mom's sake, only once. No, I think I got to feeling way too comfortable with this saw, and it's a big saw. And saw blades don't care what they cut. They'll whack your finger before you even know they whacked it.
Right. And I got way too comfortable with it as well. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to, this piece
one
of wood
time
might fly up and hit me in the face. And I'm just going to hold it down.
I might not be able to have any more kids after it throws it back at me. But no, they're dangerous. And I felt really bad when you cut your fingers.
It's not your fault, so don't feel bad.
I felt responsible for that.
No, the saw injury that you can feel responsible for brings me to one of my first memories. Was your radial arm saw,
Oh, wicked.
and
I know what.
and when the board
Fell on
that
you?
it fell on me and smashed my
I
finger.
remember
But I
that.
do. So tell me how accurate this memory is. I remember it falling on. It was in the basement in your little makeshift dark room,
Yeah.
and it fell on my finger. And I remember some bleeding.
smashed
I
him
remember, yeah. And then, if I remember correctly, ice water in a yellow bowl that you had me put my hand in. Is that right?
That was
That
probably
the yellow popcorn bowl that we used all growing up.
Probably, and that was probably your mom's idea.
But then, what you did to try to make me feel better, I think probably was something that influenced and changed my life, like going forward. Because that, if I remember correctly, was the first time I ever played a video game. You let me play your Intellivision, which I had no idea that even existed. And you pulled that out, and I was like, wow.
Look at what's that? Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were really young. But, you
Yeah.
know, it's like my grandpa, he would tell me to get out of his way. You know, I followed him around like a little puppy dog. And he would tell me to get out of his way, and I wouldn't listen to him. And one day he told me to get out of his way, and the next minute I know I'm picking myself up off the floor. and he says, Marv, I love you. I don't want you to get hurt. Well, my response to him was, Papa, that's not the way you show somebody you love them. He says, well, I'll bet you that the next time I tell you not to get in my way, you don't get in my way. Well, I never got in his way again. But I want to give my mom credit, a lot of credit, for being both a mother and a father to me. I love my mother more than life itself. Unfortunately, I talk to her 5 times a day. I tell her every day, Mom, if I did this to my 2 sons, they'd never want to talk to me again. But I know she gets lonely. She's by herself. And I know she gets lonely, and I will. I'll call her every day. 3 or 4 times. But, you know.
Yeah. 90 years old now.
90 yesterday. And she can outrun me any day of the week.
That's those cigarettes.
I guess. I guess. Yeah.
So I figured, you know, that memory about the saw got me thinking. There's a lot of debate, I'm sure, about how young you can have especially vivid memories, but I feel like I have a lot of really vivid memories from a very young age. So I wanted to throw some of these stories at you. You can tell me how accurate I am.
Okay.
If you remember,
Okay.
We'll see whose memory is better.
Mine's old, remember?
But feel free to elaborate on any of these and share other moments or things related to them if you want. So let's see. I seem to remember, and I think I would have been like 2-ish when this happened.
Oh, boy.
But I remember the layout of our living room, and that brown couch we had was underneath the window by the front door, and you were sitting on it, and I seem to remember taking off like a bat out of hell and punching you between the legs.
Oh, that's probably true. But you didn't destroy anything because Chris came along later.
Well, no, I think he was just born, which is why.
That's what, I don't.
So maybe that's why we don't have a sister.
Right
Yeah. Yeah, we can't go there.
Okay, so I mean that's something that could have happened multiple times.
I can remember things that you guys did. I can remember telling Chris, don't run through the house with that straw in your mouth. The next minute, I know he's rammed the straw halfway down his throat. And you remember that, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
So that was Chris?
It was a pixie stick, wasn't it?
Yeah, I felt like that was me. So that brings up an interesting point.
You probably did it too. Now, you like to run into the grandfather clock.
Yeah. Well, The straw, I remember like getting ready to go to the hospital and stopping halfway there and realizing that apparently that it was Chris now, that he was okay, and just going home, which I always thought that was me. I don't know why. I actually, maybe I do kind of remember. It was from a balloon, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
I thought it was a pixie stick, but you're right. It might have been one of those hard white
Yeah.
sticks from the balloon.
Okay. Well, the fact that I can't accurately remember who that is, so brings me to this one, because Chris and I will often have a debate about who this actually happened to. Which one of us fell to the bottom of the pool and you pulled us out by the hair?
I think that was you.
You being Tim or Chris?
Tim.
When?
See, that's so different from my memory, though. I don't remember Dad pulling me out. I remember Bob, Big Grandma's husband, diving to the bottom of the pool to get me after I slipped through an inner tube.
Well, then maybe both happened. But I remember falling off. It wasn't through an inner tube. It was off a raft, and then looking up and seeing Dad through the water.
I remember that.
And then just remember coming up by the hair.
See, that's probably you. For me, mine, I mean, and if this never happened, well, damn. But I remember the first time I didn't have my water wings or whatever those floaty things are that go on your arms. Yeah. And I'm in this blue and white inner tube that, I mean, I probably couldn't get my leg through now, but back in the day, I was such a little guy. I'm in it, and then all of a sudden I lift my arms up to the sky. I don't know if I was trying to, I don't know what I was doing, but all of a sudden
I'm not in it.
I'm looking up at all you people not in the water, and I'm on the bottom of the pool. And this is the sole memory that is why I don't swim to this day and don't like getting wet. So what I'm saying is, if it never happened, well, then I need to slap myself, and then I need to go take some swimming lessons.
Do you remember the spider story in the pool?
I remember the video. Do you still have the video?
I still have it.
Can you get it digital? I'll post it on the website with this episode.
I vaguely remember this.
Could you post the whole video? Because I remember Chris running out naked.
Yep,
and
I remember
saying,
that.
"Don't record me, Daddy."
Oh yeah, that was funny. Oh, I've got some really old videos of you guys.
Gosh.
Well,
that
if you
brings
can,
up a
if you
pool
can find
memory,
the
though.
spider
I remember
one.
getting bit or stung by a sweat bee and swearing.
Oh, come on, that was me.
That you stung me.
That was me.
Burned me with a cigarette. No,
sure
You
that
swear
was me.
I'd burn you with a cigarette?
Yes.
Yeah, which one of us was that? Because that was on my list
I don't
here.
remember that.
See, I vividly remember that being, or maybe I just remember witnessing it. I don't know. But
I think what happened is you just like somehow, because we're so close in age and people thought we were twins, you've absorbed many of my
I'll
memories.
tell you,
It's
some of the
possible.
times I'll look at your pictures and I can't tell one from the other.
Oh, it's easy. The ones that look like Chucky or me.
Oh,
The other ones are Tim.
The
okay.
ones that grew up to be dead sexy and me.
Oh, well, you gotta get something.
I'm not going there.
I remember your I don't know if it was your first, I assumed it was, first cordless phone that you got
Oh, boy.
with the big long metal antenna sticking out of the top.
Yeah.
Okay, this is something that you are awesome at, and I try to replicate this. I even have a reminder on my calendar on the days that our kids are home with Alicia to call them every day on lunch, and I still don't do it. But you did it religiously
Yeah.
when we were young every single day, and I remember that being like what I looked forward to more than anything every day.
Yeah, you look forward to me bringing you the I would stop at there was a store that sold the Wonder store, Wonder Bread. They also sold these little pies. Do you remember that? Like a strawberry pie or a blackberry pie. And they would sell them, like day-old ones, for almost nothing. And I would get those and bring them to you guys. I remember that. I think once I started to work at the university, I stopped. But when I had the garage, I would come home every day and see you guys at lunch.
Yeah. Let's see. I remember the house in Ann Arbor before the upstairs was finished. but I remember you working on it. And I just remembered another one. There's two things I remember from that upstairs. One is I remember the only time that I did talk to your dad, your real dad.
I remember that too.
Was upstairs. Yep. I remember that. I don't remember what we talked about, but I remember talking to him.
That was the first time that I had talked to him. Okay. That's when he cried. I'd never saw that. I'd never heard the man cry, but I heard him cry, and that was.
Well, I mean, people change. Yeah. I just was in San Francisco for work and visited Alcatraz, and in the gift shop they had one of the former inmates, and he was super nice.
Yeah.
But obviously, if he was in Alcatraz, he did something pretty bad because that was. The other thing that I remember from upstairs, and I don't remember this one being me. I remember this one being Chris, but I remember playing Pictionary, and he was supposed to draw boots.
And he drew boots.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
There's a chip off the old block right there, boy.
I definitely remember that.
I remember you always having a pack of cigarettes rolled in your sleeve.
Oh, yeah, the 60s. You got to remember, I grew up in the 60s.
Yeah.
What a time to grow up.
Right. But then as we got a little older, and we started to get in trouble from time to time, one of my fondest, if you could have a fond memory of being in trouble, one of my fondest memories was in the first house we lived in Pinckney. I don't remember what I did, but I knew you were mad. And I ran all over the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
And you were like Jason Voorhees. Every time you weren't running. I was running everywhere. And every time I turned around, there you were. It was like, what the hell? And then I remember when you finally caught me, you carried me home by the belt. And the belt broke. So you're carrying me by the belt face down and the belt breaks. So.
You get up and start running away again. No.
And then the only two other times that I really vividly remember being in some kind of trouble was there was the time that I think I scratched your car when I went to work at the gas station, and then I hid from you in the cooler.
You don't go in the cooler, boy.
Yeah. And then the first time that I went to a friend's house and did a little underage drinking.
I remember that one well.
Although I didn't really get in trouble that time. It was more like
that goes right back to a lesson I learned when I was little. I got drunk on moonshine. Thought I was gonna die. I've never been so sick in my life. My grandpa punished my uncle, but he didn't punish me. He said, I think you've learned a lesson. I was sick. I'll always remember it. We got into this stuff, and I drank it, and I got an upset stomach. I thought I was hungry. So we can't go home. We can't go to the house and get something to eat because Granny's going to kill us both. So we go and we get a green watermelon. Then we eat part of a green watermelon. Well, I even got hungrier then after that because my stomach's really bothering me. So we can't eat no more of that. So we broke into the smokehouse where my grandma had like bacon, and because it used to hang in this. It wasn't in a refrigerator. It was. I don't know why it didn't kill us, but it didn't. But there was no, she made beef jerky. There was no beef jerky, but there was sauerkraut. Well, that was the end of it right there. I ate some sauerkraut. I won't go any farther than that. I'll let your imagination do that one. But
sauerkraut's disgusting. I don't even want to think about it.
Oh, it's so good. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I love sauerkraut.
It's funny, though. You guys both have a story about that. And I still remember this day walking or trying to walk home from my friend's house. I was probably in 9th grade. You're laughing because I know you exactly know what I'm about to talk about. Is walking home caked in either my own or somebody else's vomit from the party the night before. Thinking I'm smart, I'm going to get home. I'm by Zuki Lake Tavern. So, Tim, you know how far we are from the house. And this red Grand Prix pulls up. Hey, you need a ride? And I'm like, no, I don't. Actually, you're not even here right now. I'm just going to keep walking. But Dad picks me up, takes me home about 9 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't say a word to me. I walk into my room, go back to sleep, come out of the house out of the bedroom about 5 p.m. at night. Nothing was ever spoken about it. To this day, we've never talked about it. Lesson was learned. That's all that needed to be done.
I think sometimes that's the best lesson you can learn. I don't know if you remember this or not, Chris, but I remember one Saturday morning you coming home. I don't know, 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. You'd been to a field party. Do you remember the mosquito thing?
I mean, I was 18 at this point. That was a graduation party. I had to work at Applebee's the next day, and I had to wear long sleeves on a summer day because I was covered in mosquito bites. But yeah, I remember that party. I remember whose party it was. He likes our Facebook page for this, but it was his party.
Yeah, all the drunk mosquitoes in Livingston County. I'll never forget you saying to me, there's got to be, every mosquito in Livingston County's got to be drunk today.
I drank 6 bottles of Pepto-Bismol that day, and I still didn't feel right. So, yeah, no, I will never forget that day.
Yeah, I think...
Didn't learn much, but I won't forget.
I had pretty much threw the drinking away when you guys were born. I was pretty wild.
I've heard stories.
I was a pretty wild young child.
And I don't remember you drinking at all as kids. I do remember a certain smell of rolled cigarettes.
Watch it.
But that was still only when we were young. I mean, I don't remember that.
I'll tell you the one I remember most of all, and this was Tim who did this. You remember Calvin, my stepdad, and I were sitting when they lived, not where my mom lives now, but the house before. I don't know how old you were, but you were pretty young. And we're sitting there, and Calvin, he takes his tobacco out and he rolls a cigarette, and he's smoking it. And I take my Marlboros out and I roll a cigarette, or I take a cigarette out and I'm smoking it. And you said, Dad, why don't you roll your cigarettes like Grandpa does? And I said, Tim, I don't roll my cigarette. Oh, yeah, you do. I remember seeing.
I don't remember this.
You don't remember this?
No, this is a good story.
No, you said. When you were, I'm not hiding the fact that I did things that I shouldn't have done, and I know you both did too, but that's neither here nor there. We put it away somewhat. But anyway, you said, yeah, you do roll cigarettes because I used to remember you when I was in my crib watching you roll cigarettes and said they smelled different than those.
They were twisted on the end. It's weird.
And they had, you didn't say this, but they had pink papers. And I said, oh, yeah.
Child of the 60s, remember? That's what he said earlier.
I do remember picking up as like young, like this was in the upstairs of the Ann Arbor house too. I remember picking up one of your cigarettes out of the ashtray, and like, I want to try this. And I picked it up and put it in my mouth and blew.
Blew. Oh no, you got.
And that same day, I was like, here's one of your maybe not so good influences. But I remember going, okay, I tried that now, and then I looked like down at the ground and I was like, shit.
Now I
just had to try everything that Dad did.
Of course. You guys got it. Little children, their minds are sponges. They are what they see. And I hope that you saw lots of good things in me. I know there were bad things.
I mean, it's easy to remember the bad things, but that's why I wanted to talk about all these things, because the good memories, it's a lot harder to hold on to those things, but it's easy to remember if somebody treated you poorly.
Yeah. Well, I hope you don't have too many of those memories, either one of you.
So, I would say one of the, it's not necessarily a single memory because it was a long period of time, but we both wanted to be rock stars.
Yeah.
And I don't know that many parents would encourage and fund those kind of dreams the way that you did.
You were doing something that I wanted to do, and I never did. You know, I was so proud of both of you. I used to watch Chris. He was the typical bass player. He'd stand over in a corner and do nothing but jump up and down. And I thought, why is he doing that?
Did I even jump up and down? I'm pretty sure I didn't move.
I have a video of you guys when you played it, and it's on Facebook. When you played at Magic Bag, you moved every once in a while.
Usually he just sat on his amp. We tried so hard to get him.
Bass player.
That first amp I had was so comfortable. It was never the same after it got stolen.
Prefer that to a recliner?
Yeah.
So I do remember after you and Mom split up that you went through a phase where you were one of the band.
I was one of the band.
Yes, he was.
And that was like, and that is the first time that I ever really remember you
tying
drinking.
one on. I wasn't about to let.
One of my favorite pictures of you, and if I can find this, I'll put this on is like we're at your kitchen table in the house you still live in right now, and we had just finished that
Violet
drinking
tequila
game where you like everybody poured a little bit of their own drink into the middle
Pink
of
circle,
it.
I think is what it was called, or something like that.
But you just like looked at me with one eye closed and held up two fingers like a peace sign in front of you, and just looked at me through them. And then I snapped a picture of that, and that's probably one of my favorite pictures.
I remember the conga line that night when I hit you or something. I don't remember. But I remember you guys putting me in bed that night. Oh, God, I just knew I was going to be hungover like a bear. And Chris comes to me and he gives me this big glass of water, and he knew something I didn't know. Drink this water and you'll wake up and you won't have a hangover. Well,
I might have had some experience.
I think so. Well, I woke up the next morning and I didn't have a hangover. I said, damn, this boy is smart. I got out of bed and I was still drunk. That was the reason I didn't have a hangover. Oh, that was... I tied one on that night. I think that was the last one that I did.
No. You tied quite a few on with that band.
It was like that whole summer.
Yeah. It was like the summer of '99. Even though it was probably like 2003. But yeah, you partied hard. You kept up harder than I think Jim before he left the band. I mean, him and his Smirnoff Ices. God love Jim. I hope he's moved on from that. Keith. Yeah. You outdrink Keith? Yeah. You did not drink me.
I tried.
I don't know if you could even today.
All I got to do is sit at a table with you with an open beer. I don't even got to drink it.
Well, those were the days that
Tim is right. Those were on a level of, this is my dad, but this is also my friend, that we reached the apex that summer, and I'll never forget those. But after that, it was a different type of respect.
Yeah. Well, there came a point when we were all just the three of us that I couldn't be just your father anymore. I had to be your friend. And I had to let you get away with some things. But, I remember it very well. And I miss it. I really do. But I got the memories.
Well, we're having a drinking game Saturday night.
I'm not coming.
You guys both lost already. I'm just saying. I mean, I might have a problem, but you both lost already.
Just tell me the lid's laying on the table, and I'll sit right here and pass out.
Well, I think this is a good point to wrap it. But I know there's a lot of other.
Oh, we could have another one of these.
So yeah, I definitely. We're gonna have to do this. Like, we'll have you recurring regularly.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
Rehashing old stories.
I'd love to do that. I got lots of stories. Some of them are.
And this is definitely, out of all the episodes that I have already planned for this I think is one of the ones that I was most excited about selfishly, because there are all these stories that I've heard you tell, and there are still plenty more that I've heard you
I
tell.
could go on.
That I want, that's the reason I gave you that book where you can write all your own stories, because I selfishly want these stories for myself whenever the day, hopefully far
I
from
hope it
now,
is too.
happens when you're not here anymore.
I hope it's a long time off, but
So that's why I'm, I gave you that book. There was a point where I wanted to like do a video interview with you. So
anything, I'll do whatever you want. I've got it.
So that's why I really wanted to do this episode. I wanted to get those stories, and I wanted them in some kind of permanent record.
Okay, just don't let some people hear some of the things I said. Oh no,
I can't really control that.
Your
mom might know
my mom
that you
knows everything.
had a second table
I
saw
never hid
accident,
anything from my mother.
except your second table saw
Except my
accident.
second. That's the only thing I ever hid from her. I told her everything because I thought that was the best thing to do.
I want you guys to know that both of you are the reason that the table saw is the only saw that I don't own and have no desire to own. Because y'all are crazy.
You just got to respect it. That's all. You got to respect it, and you can't get real comfortable with it. I'm going to take and put a red square around my blade, and I'm going to label it as a no finger zone.
Yeah, honestly, in a future episode with you, I'd like to explore when you discovered that your sons weren't children anymore, and when we actually became adults. I kind of wanted to discover or to go over that tonight, but I mean, we're way over where we want to go. So we're definitely going to have you back, because there's a couple of discussions I'd like to have with you in the future.
I think it would be fun, and I look forward to it.
Well, we look forward to it too. So I just want to remind everybody where they can find the show. It's been approved by Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Apple is still a little slow, but we expect that with Apple. So hopefully by next week, the show will be approved by Apple as well. And of course, you can find episodes and blog posts about parenting on shutupandDad-podcast.com. And what I hope is a unique twist on the blog articles. Some of you have already noticed this because it's already gotten quite a bit of listens. But if you're too lazy to read the blog post, well, I will read it to you. So please make sure you share this with your friends. Share it with any other parents that you think might benefit from these types of stories. Realizing that they're not alone in some of these struggles, and we just want to try to help you become the parent you want to be. So thank you, Dad, for being here today.
It was my pleasure, and I think you're doing a great thing. Both of you.
And thank you, Chris, for being a co-host with me. We got a good guest lined up next week, and see you all then.